So in the last movie, we created this class called person, and we were able to create a new person object and interact with it. But one of the problems that I mentioned was that we have all of this defined inside of our script block in our HTML page. Now, if you're working on a larger scale application, this is obviously not going to work because ideally you're going to want each class in its own separate JavaScript file. And I'm going to show you one of the most popular methods to accomplish that, and it's called using a self-executing anonymous function. So what we're going to do is to create a new file. You can hit Command or Control-N, and we're going to save this file to the desktop where our HTML file is, and I'm going to call this person.js. To create a self-executing anonymous function, the first thing we do is to start with some parentheses. So I'm going to open up a set of parentheses here. And then now we put an anonymous function. So we just say function, and we don't even give it a name. And we open up the actual parentheses for that function, put in our opening curly brace, and down after the closing curly brace, we put in another set of parentheses. And then finally, we finish off that block with a semicolon. So what this is going to be is anything that's included inside of this anonymous function is going to be executed immediately by the browser. What we need to do now is to pass in the window property because we're actually going to need that inside of this function. So we're actually going to send it in right here, pass in the window object, which is the root object in JavaScript, and then we need an argument here in this function to catch it. Now, we could call this anything we wanted, but just to keep it simple, I'm also going to call it window. Inside of this self-executing anonymous function, this is now where we can define our person class. So what I'm going to do is to come in and I'm going to copy this code out right here and paste it in. And I got to get the F there. And I'm just going to do some alignment here so everything is tabbed over correctly. So again, inside of this anonymous function, we're defining our person class, which again has those two instance variables, name and address. We're creating an instance method called sayHello, which is essentially just logging out the name property with a string. And I also have my static property called species down here. So at this point, we've actually defined our class. But the root window element doesn't know anything about this class because, again, we're inside of this anonymous function. In order to expose it so that other JavaScript can actually use it, we need to set it as a property of the window class. Remember that we're actually sending in that window object here. So to do that, I'm just going to say window.person is equal to person. So now this class will actually be exposed on the window element so that anybody can actually create person objects. So if I go back to the HTML now, and let me just remove this. Now we need to actually include that class. So to do that, I'm going to use a script element right above our main JavaScript block here. So in Sublime Text, I can type script and then hit tab. And then I just need to add in a source property. And remember, the person.js is in the same folder, so I can just put person.js. And now this code block in the init function should work just as before, because now it's actually including that class file for us to use. So I'm going to go over to Chrome. Let's refresh, and let me go to the console here. And we can see we now have that same result. Libramlo says hello. It's all of the same things that we did before, and I can actually go to the proto object, which is our prototype, and we can see we have our constructor function, just like before, which has a static property called species. Inside of there, we have a sayHello function, all the same things that we did before, but now we're able to actually keep things in a separate class file, and this is going to be really helpful for you, especially when you're working on larger projects.